Hi, I'm Christan with the Getzen Company, and I'm joined today by Jon Whitaker, and this is your second trip up in a year.
That's right. I was here, it was December 14th of last year, and so we're right about a year from the last visit.
So what brought you here December 14th of last year?
So several things. A discussion that we had led into several different projects, both on the instrument and the mouthpiece. The primary trip up last year was to sort of sign off on or help sign off on a design for a new instrument that was designed specifically for use in a college marching band. Those discussions led to discussions about my own personal equipment and you sort of suggesting, hey, we've got something that we're really excited about, and it's something different than we were offering the last time you were here, which was probably 6 or 7 years prior.
Yeah.
Why don't you try it while you're here?
Yeah.
And kind of see what you think. If for nothing else other than we would love your feedback on it, but also this might be a fit. And so that's sort of what led to that first trip. That's a very short.
Now the backstory of that is the 4047. I'd worked with one of your friends, colleagues, and teachers, Pete Ellefson of Indiana University, and we'd worked on the 4047 DS together.
Right.
And then that led to the 4047 ET working with Enzo.
Right.
And when you guys we were talking about this, and Pete actually went back and you mixed his album and made Pete's album, which he performed on the 4047 DS at the time.
Right.
So Pete was listening back, and he liked the sound of that, and so it was just kind of a meeting to see where things were at instrument-wise, and seeing if the new ET was a step up from the original design. And so you switched from an axial flow Bach at the time to a 4047 ET. Now, can you tell us about that transition?
Yeah. So it's been really great and really sort of an easy switch. The way that this instrument, and this happens to be mine actually, the instrument plays and responds from top to bottom is very similar to what I had sort of grown accustomed to. And it's also very similar for me to be able to sort of create the sound that I'm wanting to create. I mean, the sound that I have in my head is sort of, grounded in that historic sort of Bach, that everybody.
Lots of core,
but in projection, but also warmth and brilliance and a good mixture of all of that.
And clean and not a lot of aperture noise.
Exactly.
And nobody ever talks about that, but sometimes if you have a lot of grain in the sound, that can be the air is actually flowing faster or coming out faster than the sound.
Yeah.
And so I work really hard in the designs to equalize that so that the grain or the aperture noise gets lost in the color.
Right. And through this process and working on this instrument and picking this instrument and also some mouthpiece modifications that we've done and just discussions that we've had over the last really 2.5 years that we sort of got back in touch and started talking about these projects has led me to think about how I describe the way an instrument blows or plays. Free blowing versus tight. Yeah. And I used to be one that would pick an instrument up and play it and wow, this is very open, this is very free blowing, or man, this instrument's very tight. And there's sort of a correlation between free blowing and tight, where free blowing is the good and tight is the bad. And I've come to a different conclusion about that. And for me, it's where the instrument responds to the air and to where the resistance is.
The start of the note.
The very front of the note.
Yeah.
And a lot of the other instruments that I've played in my career were easy to play free blowing. But after time, that start point, that resistance point is, and this is just a visual, but is way farther down the slide to where you get to the point where you feel like you're always reaching for that. That's exactly me.
Yeah.
That was just from my own playing.
Yeah.
Felt like I was always reaching for that. Didn't have any stability. You lose the core and the core and the purity of the center of the sound, and then things get uneven. Whereas you pick up an instrument and sort of toot on it, and it's tight, but tight for me now is the response is right here.
And I always say compression, not tight, because if a higher compression instrument, and we were talking about this, the older you get, generally, the more we relax, and the more you can just have the instrument channel you. And when you're young, I always hear the player in the way.
Yeah, and I'm guilty of that this
me too.
morning.
Yeah, yeah.
but so for me, it's trying to find a right balance and a mix of where the instrument responds, but is it still easy to play? You know, and
because those old instruments we used to play that were so open, what would happen when they were so open over time? If you're playing an hour and a half recital.
Oh, I mean, me personally, you would just be gassed like all the time. You would just completely, you would wear out. And I remember when I was, in the '90s, starting to sort of come up and on the scene, if you will, or whatever. It's like, the adage was, man, you should play the biggest equipment you can get away with. And I kind of think, unless you're playing in an orchestral setting to where you have to crank out a massive amount of sound all the time in a big hall, big string section, maybe compromised acoustics in your hall, whatever. That equipment, you need something that's going to do that. But for the day in and day out type of playing that I do, and the day in and day out type of playing that most collegiate students should do, which that's the business that I'm in, is training, hopefully training the next generation of players and teachers. I kind of want to get away. I want to play the smallest equipment that I can get away with and be more, let the instrument work for me and be more responsive and efficient, rather than me having to work to get the instrument to do what I want it to do.
That higher efficiency is what I'm always after in all the equipment that I'm working with, and it's to have the music come forward and the players not in the way. We're not having to do physical manifestations, because when you have to do those physical manifestations, it comes through rather than the music.
Well, and I went through a period 7-8 years ago where there were things going on that I thought for sure there was just something wrong with me.
Every player goes through that.
Not uncommon. There's something wrong with
every player has that at some point in their career, though.
But in hindsight, looking back at it now, and thinking about the equipment that I was playing then, the equipment that I then switched from that to sort of fix that problem, and where I am now, I really think that the issues that I were having were precisely related to what we're talking about.
With the reaching.
And the overworking and things being big, and again, then sort of making a modification to try to make things bigger because everything felt so tight, even though I was reaching. I mean, it's all created here, had nothing to do, well, it had nothing to do with the equipment except for the sensation that I was getting from the equipment was causing the issue. And I saw it countless times. I could tell you 2 specific students that this very thing happened to, that we used that experience and sort of, it's like, just play this. One student in particular had an old Con 88H that he just, that his high school horn that he had or whatever. And he said, I don't have these problems on this instrument. Great. I want you to play that horn for 3 months. This semester, you're going to play it in your ensembles, you're going to play it in your lessons, everything. And then let's just see what happens to your endurance and your face and your technique or whatever. By and large, a lot of those physical things went away. And then we did a proper fitting and found something for him that would work. There's one of them has actually been here to be fitted, and the other one went a different direction. But
that's one of the things you have to be careful about too. If your instrument is causing you physical manifestations, and you have to squeeze on a certain partial or relax on a certain partial, and so you're having to do inconsistent physical things, it takes a while, even with new equipment, to get the body to not do those things that you were doing on the old equipment.
Yeah. And for me, I feel like this setup for me allows me to do kind of what it is that we're describing. It's like I can just I can play to where it is. The instrument will do the majority of the work. I have room to change the color. I use it in the orchestra and can heat it up when I need to. I can also pick it up in the middle of a long 5, 6, 7 lesson teaching day. At any point, pick it up and play and demonstrate, and it gets the point across. And I'm not having to get wound up every time I'm about to demonstrate something. I can just pick it up and play it. There's one little thing that we've been working on here, tweaking, that we've got fixed, or we're very close to, that is probably more a me thing than it is the instrument, but just something just doesn't line up exactly right. But by and large, the other thing that I think with this particular instrument that is crucial for me, I mean, the one thing that I tell everybody that I've talked to about playing this instrument is this really is a culmination rather, of 25 plus years of experience building instruments, building Edwards modular instruments, and you working with everybody from, you know, your high school kid weekend warriors all the way through to the best artists in the world.
Yeah.
And all of that research and all of that knowledge and education and information has been put into an instrument that is soldered together.
Yeah.
And I think that is a big, and if I think about the instruments that I've played throughout my career that I've like the way that I sound going back and recording, they've all been on instruments that were by and large soldered together. Obviously, an axial flow valve has the thing, but not modular.
Yeah, you always get a higher efficiency with the solder, and the modular instruments are fantastic because you can pick exactly what you want. But you having it fixed together, you're always going to get a small percentage of increase and of improvement. And as a pro, it's all about 1% and 2% adding up over time. And that's why Jon's here. Essentially, is rather than just going to a regular retailer and trying more instruments. He loves the 4047 that he has. It just needs a slight modification. And when you come here and work with me, that's what you get.
Exactly.
We can adjust other things that may not be exactly stock. It may only be 2, 3, 4%, but that is a huge difference to the face and to the comfort.
Right, exactly.
Of the player.
And you know, already just in being here a couple hours, I feel a lot more comfortable than when I got here, and that's why it's so much fun to come here, to sort of be able to bounce off ideas and you know, have your feedback too about, hey, this sounds good, this doesn't sound good, and
it helps, and it pushes me. When people come in, it pushes me to improve the instruments, because if there's an issue that a player's having, someone else out in the world is, and as long as I'm willing to listen, and so far I am.
Yeah, well, and it's been, even in this process, even discussing the specific thing that I came up here for to finally get dialed in. I mean, there's been, you know, you have found a nugget with some lead pipe modifications that have made a big difference, and at least a handful of people that I know that have them are into that as well. And so I think that's a really great thing about having, you know, you and this company as a resource, is that there's, you know, it's not a, this is what we make, hard line in the sand. You're always trying to make things better. And you know,
and the company's willing to listen to me and allow me to seamlessly roll these things into production for Getzen and for Edwards seamlessly, so that the next time we do that part, it's automatically the new part that's improved. And I'm just always looking for these small percentages. And if the company's not willing to listen, then it's just it would be a total drag. I don't know if I could do that.
Right.
And so being a privately held, family-owned company is fantastic in that regards, because I can walk over, I can talk to our production coordinator and say, look, this new tooling that we just made, it works. Everything now has that.
Right.
And if we go back, and the next time we draw the tubes and we start setting those things, it's part of it. And I love that. In 2024, our instruments are going to be better than they were 6 months ago.
Yeah, of course.
And so we're just always striving to improve. And, you know, I think it's fantastic. Jon, I'd like to thank you for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
It's been amazing.
Yeah, awesome.
And I'm looking forward to the next few years to working with you.
Yeah, absolutely.